So Miss Leah Miner is going to do her first special music. It's not a recital, but it is special music. So. Thank you, Leah. Well done. Way better than I can ever do. Your dad and I are just amazed, right? All right, so I shared this in Sunday school, Mike, so I have a video, and then it's a little bit of sound. So I was teased this morning about the fact that curling is boring, so I showed my Sunday school class this. So curling is not boring, just for the record. But Carol asked me, did you watch the Pro Bowl? I said, no, I was watching curling. And not that. There was a match with the U.S. and Switzerland. So, but I don't know. It just intrigues me that someone developed this game, and it feels like the guys that do this especially do not look like athletes. They look like they should be going to play in beer league softball or something like that. And I'm like, I could probably compete at that level because I'm not, that's, anyway. So that's why I enjoy it, and it's kind of a unique sport. So we are continuing in Proverbs, and so this is the kind of chart we've been using as we work through that. We had just started 2 weeks ago, Proverbs 8, and we canceled last week because of snow. And then what's that? Oh, that's correct. Thank you for correcting me. Last week was our 5th Sunday fellowship, so we had afternoon service. And we didn't have that. So 2 weeks ago, we got through verse 4. So we're going to pick up in verse 5 in just a minute. And remember, this is a narrative proverb. Solomon's telling a story to relay the principles of wisdom and teaching his children. So it's not just single statements or single quotes, but rather that it's a story built on what came before and what follows after. So we'll pick up and read verses 4 and 5, which is where we left off. It says, to you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of men. You simple ones understand prudence, and you fools be of an understanding heart. So this is wisdom as personified as a woman crying out and calling out. And he says, and this is what she's saying. So now, where do these two verses fit into our little window pane? Where would you put them? Miss Leah, which one do you think? Teachable. I think that's a good answer. Excuse me. And I think there's a couple more we could add. People, that's another one. I think there's one more that I found. You have to think about who is speaking. Oh, that's not one I thought of, but that would fit. I thought of principle because it's talking about who we listen to. So let's go. So now that we've kind of oriented ourselves, who does wisdom call to in verses 4 and 5? And there are four distinct individuals she mentions. Some men and sons of men. You don't have to raise your hand, Quinn. Just yell out. Okay, fools and simple ones. So those are the 4 groups. What does she want them to do, or what does she tell them to do? Have an understanding heart, okay? And what's not necessarily specified, but implied in what she does? If she's speaking to them, what does she expect them to do? Listen. So she wants them to listen, but then, as Jim said, to comprehend, to understand, to have an understanding heart. And what does she want them to understand? What kind of characteristics does she mention? Prudence. Okay. There's a word we don't use very often. Does anybody else have a different translation that says something other than prudence? All right. Huh? I don't know how to interpret Isaac. If so, how would you explain prudence to Leah and Esther? What would you tell them it's about? Or what does it mean? Okay, not to make foolish choices. Vicky's, I think, is on the right track. What else could we explain it, or how else could we explain it? The word I would substitute for prudence, it might be helpful, is discretion. So if we say that prudence is related to discretion, how then would we explain it to Leah and Esther? Making the wrong choices have consequences. So make wise one. It's looking at something and saying, I could do this, but it's wiser not to. That's, some of you know the phrase, discretion is the better part of valor. Discretion means I'm looking at something and saying, I can do this, but I probably just should just say no. I should probably just back away. And then she talks about, as already was mentioned, an understanding heart. So we understand the heart part, but what is an understanding heart? What other adjectives could we put in place of understanding, or if you have a different translation? Okay, compassionate, okay. What else? I think you could use the word a perceptive heart or a discerning heart. It goes back to the discretion and the prudence, but it's part of who you are. It's part of how you're built. So do we respond to wisdom this way? Do we pay attention? Are we willing to listen? Do we then not only listen, but do we understand and apply what we're being taught or what we're learning? Verse 6. Listen, for I will speak of excellent things, and from the opening of my lips will come right things. So, where would we put this guy? Which square? I think there's 2, and they both start with the same first letter. I know that doesn't help you because there's more than one there. What's that? Okay, principal. That's not one I thought of, but I think that could be an option. Yep. So I said those are the 2 I thought of as well. The tongue especially, because she's talking about specifically her mouth and her lips. What does wisdom say? What kind of words does she use according to her own mouth here in verse 6? Noble things, okay? And that would be excellent things in the New King James, okay? What else? There are 2 things she specifies. Right things. So you're talking about noble, excellent, worthy things, right things, upright, having integrity, having value. Does this sound like a New Testament verse or passage? And if so, which one does it remind you of? What things that are true, are noble, are just, are pure, are lovely, are of good report. If there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Now, I don't know whether Paul was thinking about this passage when he was writing to the Philippians and God used it to work it out, but they seem to be very much related, especially the idea of being noble and upright and having integrity. What do we meditate on? Is it words of wisdom? Is it what she speaks about? Are these the kind of things that we spend time thinking about and wrestling with? If they aren't, what are we wrestling with? What are we meditating on? What things are we spending time and investing in our thought life? Wisdom continues speaking in verses 7 and 8. For my mouth will speak truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are with righteousness. Nothing crooked or perverse is in them. So I think this continues the teachable and the tongue. What else does wisdom add to what she's already said? The kind of words she uses. True. Okay, so that's very straightforward. There's not it's not falsehood, there's no lies. It's what's real, it's what's legitimate. What else? Righteous. Okay. What other synonyms could we use to help us grasp what she's talking about? I came up with two, just and honest, to go with righteousness. They also would fit in connection with truth. Now, what words doesn't wisdom use? Wicked words. Okay? Now, any other different translations than wicked words or wickedness? So here are some options that you can think through what she's referring to. Offensive, unrighteous, abominable, not like in the snowman, but as an abomination, abhorrent or disgusting. That's the picture of this that wisdom is painting. These are the kinds of words I don't use. So there are a couple others. What other kind of words does she say? I don't use these words. What's that? Did you say froward? Okay. So that's the which the oh. I have a New King James and it does not say that. Mine says nothing crooked or perverse. Which way? That's fine. Twisted. So crooked, dishonest, evasive, twisted. You know, there's a purpose in what you're saying, but it's not what people think it is. You know, you can talk about double entendres and things like that. And then the last one is perverse. You know, immoral, false. When wisdom speaks, how much effort do we need to put in figuring out what she really means? Yeah, we don't. She's straightforward, she's truthful, she's honest, and real. There's no crookedness, there's no perversity. So we can understand it's not a secret, it's not a code you've got to decipher. So, if wisdom is that clear, if wisdom is that straightforward, how hard is it to understand what choice is wise and what choice is unwise or foolish? Okay, you're going where I'm going, Vicki. It's not the issue of knowing. You know, it's pretty easy to figure out, well, this is right and this is wrong. But then the question comes in, which direction are we going to choose? Not necessarily, well, I can't figure out what's the right choice in this situation. It's, okay, am I going to choose what's right? how much effort do people have to put in to figure out what we really mean when we talk or when we communicate? Because we can apply this to writing, to texting, to email, whatever. How much effort do people have to put in to figure out what we really mean when we communicate? Are we like wisdom? Is it straightforward? How often do we not only listen to what is wise and what is right, but actually do it? It's one thing to know it or say, yeah, I know that's the best choice. It's another thing to say, okay, I'm going to make that choice. Because that choice doesn't always seem fun, right? It looks like down the road it's the best choice, but man, right now it looks like it's hard work. Whether it's, choosing to invest time where I need to so that down the road I have money in the bank, or I have my health is better because I'm denying myself these things and I'm exercising. It doesn't look like fun up front sometimes, but we need to look down the road and say, I'm going to do what's wise because, as Jim mentioned, our choices have consequences and we're going to experience them. It's just a question of when. Proverbs 8, verse 9. They are all plain to him who understands and right to those who find knowledge. What does wisdom say about other people's perspective on her communication, her words? Okay. They might not be plain to people who don't understand, but they are plain to people who are wise or who are seeking knowledge. They are also what if you're seeking knowledge? Right. The person who understands them, the person who approves of them, is seeking them. And we've already learned that they're available. She makes them available. If you want them, you can get them. How does she know people understand her words? How does she know that they're plain? Because she's talking about other people's perspective on her communication. Okay, because they're true and right. If you say they are plain and they are right, what are you going to do with them? You're going to choose to use them. You're going to choose to follow them. So she can see in terms of those who are listening what they do with what she says. Do we not only approve of wisdom's words, because that's easy to say they're valuable, do we understand them? Do we talk about them? Do we follow them? Do we tell other people they're right? Are we the people that she's describing that says they're plain and they're right to those who want them, those who find knowledge? She continues in verses 10 and 11. Receive my instructions and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that one may desire cannot be compared with her. All right, so where would we put these two verses in the little grid? This one I had to work on a little bit because this is not one of the normal easy ones. At least to me it wasn't. Okay, could be priority. What else? Any other suggestions or ideas? I said there was a little bit of diligence involved because of the comparison she makes with wisdom and valuable objects. So we've got to have a little diligence to view them and hold them in that high regard. So how much value, according to verses 10 and 11, does wisdom hold? Better than rubies. Now, I don't know how much rubies are worth, but that's not the only comparison that's made. How else is wisdom's value described? Better than silver and gold. That's something we're a little more familiar with than rubies. What else? Yeah, that's a big one, right? All that I may desire. So which comparison gets your attention the most? You got silver, you got gold, you got rubies, you got all that you may desire. Okay. Yeah, so silver and gold, we want to collect that. They want to have that, whether legitimately in their bank vault or, money that relates to that. And doesn't seem to be satisfactory. So another one grab your attention other than silver and gold. Yeah, that one is the one that caught my attention. That's pretty broad, and it's a pretty bold statement that it's better than all the things, not just anything. Did you notice that? It's not just anything. It's all the things. Whatever you can desire and accumulate, he says, wisdom is better. It cannot be compared with her. How much value do we place on wisdom? Is there evidence, not just to say, yeah, we value it, it's important, but is there evidence, and what is that evidence in our life that says, I value wisdom, and you can see it in the way I conduct myself, the way I speak, the way I communicate, the choices I make. I want to read you a statement from a commentator. It says, the abundance of personal pronouns, I, mine, me, my, 16 times in the first 10 verses, makes wisdom herself the focus and not her rewards. I thought that was interesting. There's value in wisdom and there is rewards, but the focus isn't on if you're wise, you're going to get this. It's saying the value and the focus is getting wisdom, period. It ends there. And the rewards are just a bonus. Verse 12, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge and discretion. What do we learn about wisdom from this verse? Yeah, I wish Solomon had, I shouldn't criticize the wisest man who ever lived, but I wish Solomon was to describe this as my sisters are prudence and knowledge, and that there's a relationship, because I think that Andrea is correct, that is the case, is that when you get wisdom, the other things come with it because there's so much interconnection. So prudence, knowledge, discretion, and you could say, depending on the context and the translation, the idea of cleverness or insight might come along with it. When we pursue and gain wisdom, what bonuses come with it? Practically, what bonuses come with it? If you're wise, what bonuses does that bring in your life? Okay, so if you're prudent, what kind of bonus is that? What does that look like in real life? We talked about that word earlier in our... How much risk does a prudent person take? Vicky says no. Not much. Okay, I think that's a better answer than none. What kind of risks do they take? Wise risk, yeah. They're careful in the risks they take. They're not just, well, I don't care. Look at it in terms of investing. Well, here's an investment that has the potential to return 50% on my investment, but there's a risk that, a huge risk that you're going to lose it all. Well, prudence says, I'm going to take a different choice with my investment. I'm not going to take no risk, but I'm going to take carefully calculated, carefully thought through risks. Knowledge and discretion. The idea that you have the wisdom, and then knowledge is you're applying it, and you're choosing wisely because of that. These are all bonuses when you have wisdom. There's a lot of people up on the hill that have knowledge. I have worked for them, and they're very knowledgeable in a lot of areas, but practically they don't have a lot of wisdom. They don't have a lot of discretion. And wisdom in the context of Proverbs is applied information, not just simply information. What is the implication of what we can learn from wisdom? What does wisdom teach us in terms of everyday life? We can navigate life without too many train wrecks. Okay. What else can we learn from wisdom, or what does she teach us about how we can live, or what we can live like? Let's go back to the money picture. If I'm investing my money in hopes of a quick return of giant proportions, and I do that repeatedly, what is my financial life going to be like? They're going to go broke, or worse, be in debt. If I choose a prudent, a carefully thought out investment or use of my money, what is my financial life going to be like? Stable. What's that, dear? Stable. Probably a little more prosperous in the long run. Again, it's not going to be quick. It's going to take time, but then the reward comes. Here's another, a commentator wrote this: wisdom teaches us how to live discreetly, carefully, as opposed to recklessly. Not that we don't take any risk, we're just not reckless and foolish with our risk. We take it carefully and say, I know the risk, I know the reward. I'm not just looking at the reward in hopes that I get that and not considering the risk. Verse 13, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance and the evil way, and the perverse mouth I hate. So, which category does this fit in? This is probably one of the easier ones. Okay, that's not the one I was thinking of, because it specifically says fear of the Lord. But I'm not disagreeing with you, Jim. That's not. I'm saying I thought of the one that talks about fear of the Lord, which is a priority. As soon as I saw that, that's where my mind went. The fear of the Lord, and that's the priority in all this. The fear of the Lord is where Psalms begins and where Proverbs begins. So we kind of changed gears from just simply wisdom to understanding how God and the Lord fits in with wisdom. The fear of the Lord is what? What does the fear of the Lord bring or cause? Hatred of evil. Okay? After this morning, because we were supposed to be in a different situation here, but after this morning, how would you describe or explain to someone what hating evil is? What do you think? Okay, he steers far away from it as you can. It's not, in light of this morning's message, it's not choosing. It's choosing something different. You can turn around and say, well, I'm not going to choose evil. I'm going to reject it. I don't want anything to do with it. I want to choose the opposite, but I also want to reject it. I want to kind of hold it as far away as I can and go the other direction. Not choosing it, rejecting it. What does the Lord say, I hate, I don't choose, I reject in this verse? Pride, arrogancy. What else? Perverted speech or perverse mouth, depending on the translation. The first one is evil. So he says, these are the things I hate. I hate evil, morally bad or morally wrong. Whatever is morally bad or morally wrong, God rejects. Pride, inordinate or unreasonable self-esteem. He says, I reject that. Arrogance, also, a synonym. They're basically two words that mean the same thing. Again, unreasonable or inordinate self-esteem. Evil way, contemptible, choosing to live or act in a contemptible fashion. Perverted mouth or perverse mouth, things that are exactly, they deviate from what is right or what is appropriate, what is moral, and what is good. So it says, the fear of the Lord is to hate what he hates, to reject what he rejects. How do we approach, how do we think about, how do we interact with the things that God says reject, or I reject, or I hate? How do we interact with it, or how do we handle evil, pride, arrogance, perverse speech, or a perverse mouth? Do we reject them like God does, or do we kind of skirt around them or get close to them, and we're comfortable as long as it's not too bad, whatever, whether it's pride or arrogance or simply just evil things. That's where we're going to stop for tonight. Questions on what we covered tonight down through verse 13. Or thoughts or observations. Doesn't have to be a question. I think there's a couple of things that came into my mind while I was talking to Jim about the fact that, people can see how you have avoided the problem and they come to you for counsel, but also the fact that you hinted that sometimes we do foolish things and learn the hard way, and that's exactly what Solomon's saying. Don't, just listen to me. Don't learn the hard way, but we choose often to learn the hard way. So, other thoughts or questions? All right, well, let's close up and we'll be dismissed. Father, we thank you for the description of wisdom to understanding not simply what is wise, but also how you relate to it, what you think of the things we often pursue or we often fiddle with. Lord, help us to grow in wisdom, not simply knowing, as we heard tonight, knowing what's right and wrong. That's the easy part, but living it out, choosing and applying it, looking down the road and saying, I see where this leads and I want to go in the right direction, and choosing to be disciplined. Lord, we look forward to the things you have planned for us this week, for work or school or whatever it might be. May we choose to be glorifying to you. May we choose and be thinking about regularly, in this situation, what does it look like to completely love God, completely serve you, and may you be pleased with our choices. May they be wise, and may they be useful for planting seeds, for being salt and light to those around us. We thank you for this. We thank you for the opportunity to worship this morning and this evening, and all that we have been challenged with and learned. We ask all this in your Son's name. Amen.